Number 1.
This happened to my aunt and uncle in the early 80s or so. They were living in Austin, Texas, and had attended a party in a neighboring area. They were driving back very late, and at one point were driving along a very long, completely deserted stretch of road, bordered by woods and brush on one side. No houses, no streetlights, no other cars on the road, nothing. Until my uncle, who's driving, notices a car coming up behind them, which then speeds up and gets very close. My aunt and uncle start talking about how weird this guy is. They can see it's just one man driving. It was strange, since there's no reason to tailgate on an empty road in the middle of the night. Then, the guy speeds up even more and pulls up alongside them, in the other lane. He starts yelling at them to pull over and is flashing what looks like a police badge. My uncle starts to slow down to pull over, and my aunt absolutely freaks out and tells him not to. She is really creeped out that this guy, who is driving a car that has no police markings and no flashing lights, pulling up to them out of nowhere, and is now trying to get them to pull over just by flashing a badge. While they argue about whether to pull over or not, the man in the other car is getting more and more angry, yelling at them to pull over, beeping his horn and flashing the badge, saying he's the police. My aunt starts crying, and my uncle says fine. If the guy is really a cop and they need to stop for him, they will stop when they reach the next populated area, which will be a while. But they reason that if he really is a cop, he would have to understand their point of view. My aunt and uncle keep wavering between worried that this guy is out of his mind, or that he's really a cop and they're gonna be in a lot of trouble for not pulling over when they're told. Finally, they see a gas station up ahead and plan to stop there. As soon as they pull into the station, the cop speeds off, never to be seen by them again. They didn't think to try to get his license plate number at the time, and were just thoroughly creeped out. They drove the rest of the way home without incident. But oh no, the story doesn't end there. It gets much worse. A few months later, on the exact same stretch of road, a man is rescued who tells a horrifying story, which is then big news in Austin. Fake cop, flashing a badge, beeping horn, etc., had gotten this man, who was driving at night with his girlfriend on that very same road, to pull over. Once pulled over, fake cop forced the man and his girlfriend out of the car and dragged them into the woods on the side of the road. He ties the man and his girlfriend to separate trees, facing each other, and then does horrible things to both, ultimately killing the woman, while the man is forced to watch just a few feet away. I'm not sure how the man ended up eventually getting rescued, but it was long after fake cop was gone. Either someone must have found the man tied there, or he got loose from the rope and found help. They never caught the fake cop, the murderer. That could have been my aunt and uncle if they had pulled over their car that night, like my uncle wanted and started to do. My aunt always ends the story with, "And that's why my husband always has to listen to me."
Number 2.
This is a story my friend told me that happened to her oldest sister. She goes to a large, private religious university in Utah. She was staying in an apartment not too far from campus with 3 other girls. The semester had just started and 2 of 3 girls were asleep. My friend's sister was on her phone sitting in the living room when she heard what sounded like footsteps outside the window behind her. She listened closely and dismissed it as a stray cat or dog. Soon after, she heard a thud against the dining room wall coming from the outside, and heard what sounded like muffled whispering. My friend's sister is an excellent marksman, so she decided to scare whoever was outside off by opening the blinds, turning on the lights, and grabbing the shotgun she kept on the mantel and pointing it at the window while screaming for other girls to wake up. she saw a short man wearing all black and a ski mask running away. The cops came shortly after and she filed a report. Fast forward to a few weeks later. My friend's sister keeps seeing a small white truck with tinted black windows following her. She dismisses it as her imagination, but it freaks her out a little. One weekend, her roommates have gone out of town, so it's just her by herself. Right as she's trying to fall asleep, she hears pounding at her door. She runs to the door and looks through the peephole to see a cop standing there.
"Who are you?"
she asks.
"I'm a cop,"
says the guy.
"Open up, it's the law,"
he yells menacingly. My friend is starting to call bullshit, but she's scared of disobeying him if he actually is a cop. "Why are you here so late?" she asks.
"Remember a few weeks ago when that guy tried to break into your house? I have an update on him."
My friend is freaking out now, because why would a cop come to try to talk to her about the case so late and by himself? He wasn't even the officer who helped her fill out the report. "Show me your badge," she demanded. He pulled it out and shoved it into the peephole, and my friend breathed a sigh of relief. Right as she was unlocking the door, she glanced down to his legs and noticed this cop had very elevated platform boots, a machete on his utility belt, and the name on his uniform didn't match the name on his badge. "You're not a cop," she yelled at him. The fake cop screamed and started slamming on the door, saying,
"I'm an officer of the law, and you will obey me. Open up, police."
She called 911 and held her weight behind the front door, clutching her shotgun until the cops arrived. The guy was long gone by then, but he left behind his cap, which was a prop from a party store. The day after this, my friend broke her lease, moved to a new city in Utah, transferred schools, and bought a Doberman to keep her company. They never caught the guy. Hopefully, he never does this to another girl again.
Number 3.
This happened a couple of years ago when I was backpacking in Australia. I travelled around, driving a van like many backpackers there do, as it saves a lot of money with accommodation. I usually slept in rest areas, gas stations, or wherever I could park. This one night, I've been driving for a few hours and started to feel sleepy. I decided then to stop in the next rest area in the middle of nowhere. Parking in that location during daytime could be a great idea, but at night, it seemed like a horror movie location. There were no cars parked there, and no lights whatsoever. I turned off the engine and closed the curtains of the van. It was not long before dawn that I heard some heavy knocking on the side of the van.
"Open up, it's the police."
Nothing wakes you up faster than that. My heart was racing. I was just adjusting to the adrenaline rush in my system when they repeated the heavy knocking, saying it was the police. My first thought is that I parked somewhere I shouldn't. But then again, it was the middle of nowhere and it was a rest area. Before opening up, with my mind telling me that the situation was weird, I decided to go slowly to one of the windows and look through the gap in one of the curtains. I could clearly see the silhouette of the guy standing beside the van. His car wasn't too far, but it didn't have any lights or flashing lights on like a police car. This guy was definitely not a cop. Bringing up the courage that I had left, I just shouted, "Get away, I have a gun and I'm calling the cops on the radio." I didn't have a radio or a gun, but that seemed to faze him. I saw him getting back on his car, and to add to the creepiness, someone else came out of the bushes and also got in the car. They left, and a few minutes after that, I turned on my van and drove in the opposite direction they went. Safe to say that I never slept in another rest area that didn't have at least a couple of cars parked there. I don't know what those people wanted, but with Australia's history of backpackers serial killers, I'm very happy to be alive today.
Number 4.
The summer after I had graduated high school, I started attending a community college approximately an hour away from my hometown, so I could get a lot of my basic credits done before going to my university in the fall. I attended class in the morning and then would take the hour-and-a-half drive to my job, where I worked at a nursing home. This happened about twice a week. My college, home, and job are in 3 separate counties. This is important. It was one of those days where I had to wear my scrubs to class, then drive straight to work. I didn't notice anything unusual about my classes that morning, nor anything when I was walking out to my car in the parking lot. At the time, I drove a very nondescript white Malibu. As I pulled onto the main road from my college's entryway, I noticed a police car was directly behind me. This too wasn't too unusual because there was a police academy at my college. I started to get worried when after a few miles the police car was still following me, and we were bumper to bumper. I told myself he was just probably following me to the main road ahead. My family's house is in the middle of nowhere, and my mother had previously worked in the city where the college was. Consequently, I knew all the back roads. To assuage my paranoia, I decided to take the back roads home. I didn't think it would take too much longer to get to work. The light ahead turned yellow, and I knew that I could make it before it turned red, but I didn't think he would consider it me speeding, and he was trailing behind. I ran the light just as he turned red. He followed me through, even though other cars had started going and were honking and slamming on their brakes. At this point, I wondered if a Malibu had been stolen in the area and he was running my plates. I told myself it could somehow still be a coincidence. I decided to slow down below the speed limit, hoping he would pass me. I figured if he was a police officer heading out to a call, he would pass me. We had been driving on fairly busy main roads, and maybe that's why he didn't pass me. The more I slowed down, the more he slowed down. And now that we were in the country, we were back to being bumper to bumper. I glanced in my rearview mirror to see if I could see his face or his uniform. The person behind me looked like he was wearing a t-shirt, big sunglasses, and a baseball cap. I started panicking. If he flipped his lights on in the middle of nowhere, should I pull over? If he's not a cop, then I should keep driving, but if he's a real cop, I could be arrested if I keep driving. Mind you, at this point, we're almost a half an hour into this ordeal. We rounded a corner, and in my rearview mirror I saw his car was from the county of my college. In a minute or two, we'd be in another county. I kept driving and waited to see the next county sign. I figured he'd have to realize I wasn't stopping anywhere near here. If he was a cop looking to give a girl a ticket and was following her till she did something wrong, it was going to take a while. I crossed county lines and he kept pursuing me, bumper to bumper. I made a few random turns. He followed. I started to panic more. I put my cell phone in my lap and called my dad. I didn't want him to see me talking on my phone and pull me over for distracted driving. I put my dad on speakerphone and tearfully explained what was happening. He said to stay on the phone and keep driving. He said if the flashlights come on, keep driving till I hit a populated area or a restaurant, gas station, anything. I knew a main road was coming up that would take me to a McDonald's. I figured I would pull into it and go through the drive-thru. I figured it would give me time to see him better, or he'd just give up. Just a minute away from the main road, he flipped his lights on. I slammed my foot on the gas and took off towards the main road, him in hot pursuit with his lights and sirens. I whipped through the stop sign and onto the main road, then pulled into the McDonald's drive-thru. Heart racing, I turned to see where he was. The cop car was at the stop sign, lights and sirens off, just sitting there. He pulled into the gas station across the road, turned around and headed back towards the city. I noticed there was no license plate on the car. I finished the rest of the drive-through, paranoid. Luckily, at the time I worked with my sister, so I went to her house after work and spent the night there, leaving my car at my work's parking lot. I called the police the next day with my dad to report it, but they said there wasn't really anything they could do. They said I probably just imagined the lights, and it was just someone in a Crown Victoria former cop car trying to scare a girl. It was a few years later when I started hearing stories about women being pulled over by fake cops and being raped or murdered.
Number 5.
Alright, I live in a major city in the south of the USA. It's a pretty big city, and as such, one finds themselves driving everywhere at all hours of the day. This is not an elaborate story, nor typically terrifying, but there is enough left answered that still gives me the creeps to think about. It was around 1:30 AM, and I was driving home from a friend's house with my then girlfriend Alison. We had been partying a bit, but as I was driving, I had opted to maintain sobriety. Alison had a few drinks, but nothing serious, and over the course of several hours. Now, the house I was living is not in a particularly bad neighborhood, but not a good one either. The city where I live, there are lots of gentrified areas where crack dealers live next to 4-person families. It's a place where you're fine in the daytime, but you wouldn't want to be walking the streets alone late at night. Being familiar with the area, I decided to take a little cut-through street. As I pull onto the street, I end up at a bus stop sign. I look behind me, and there is a truck that pulls out of an adjacent road behind me to my left. I move forward from the stop sign, and he continues to follow me. I think nothing of it. The road doesn't have many street lamps, so it's pretty dark, and I can't get a look inside the truck's cab. I drive for about another 20 feet, and all of a sudden, I see blue lights in my rearview mirror. Cop lights. Now, at that moment I was thinking, God damn it, not again. However, as I look into the rearview mirror, I notice several things that don't seem right. For one, there aren't many police trucks in the inner city area. Sure, there are some, but they're not that common. Secondly, the police lights are not on top of the cab like a normal cop car, but next to the actual headlights by the grille, like a detective's car. I also noticed there is an air freshener dangling from his rearview mirror. I've dealt with police officers on numerous occasions, but I have never seen one with a stereotypical pine tree freshener. Lastly, as I keep moving forward, slowly contemplating the situation considering pulling over, I noticed a final strange variable. There is no police siren, no horn, no noise. It was late, it was dark, and I continued to drive slowly as I thought about all the odd factors. If I had only noticed the first 2 factors, I think I may have stopped, but the fact that the blue lights kept flashing without any siren was just off. Also, I know in my state it is legal to pull into a well-lit area at night time, just for these circumstances. I decided that the air freshener, the position of the lights, and the lack of sirens was just too weird. I wasn't going to risk pulling over in the bad area, so I decided to move forward at around 20 miles per hour until I got to a gas station. The truck continues to follow me. There are a lot of speed bumps and road signs on this road, and thinking there is possibly a cop pulling me over, I abide by all the laws. The final straw that I determined made this truck a false police officer. He also obeyed all the traffic laws. When a cop wants you to pull over, you pull over, and if you don't, they aren't going to stop at a stop sign to let you get away. This guy stopped when I stopped, moved forward when I did, and even turned as I decided to get to a more populated road. After about 100 yards, he turns off his lights, both the blue lights and his main headlights, takes a left behind me, and peels away. It was at that moment I knew he was not a cop. I don't know exactly what I avoided that night. I drive a fairly nice car, so it could have been a carjacking, but I don't rule out something worse. If it weren't for my ex-girlfriend's presence, I may have stopped. Ultimately, I'm just happy I didn't.
Number 6.
So, this didn't actually happen to me, but rather to my ex-boyfriend's mum. It definitely made an impression though. I'll try to relate the story as she told me, but I may be missing a few small details as it's been a few years since I heard her talk about it. This took place when my ex-boyfriend was only a couple of years old. Helen, his mum, was living by herself in London. I believe she had a council flat in South London, and from what I remember, it was on the second or third story of a tower block, facing out onto a street. The door and window opened onto a balcony / a walkway that was shared with other flats on the floor. The block of flats were also fairly close to a well-known South London prison. So, on the night this took place, she was home by herself with her baby. He was already asleep in the bedroom and she was sitting in her living room with the front-facing window. At some point in the evening, the phone rings, and when she answers, the caller tells her it's the local police. They tell her that an inmate at the prison has escaped and has been spotted in the neighbourhood. Apparently, he's fairly dangerous, so the police are driving around the neighbourhood, making sure he hasn't broken into any homes. They tell her that they are currently situated outside her building and ask her to quickly confirm that everything is okay by walking to her window and opening the curtains quickly. She's just about to do so when she realizes something doesn't feel right. She quickly tells her that her baby has woken up and she has to go, and hangs up. After this, she calls her local police station to confirm that the policeman that had called her was genuine. Apparently, there was no escaped convict, and the police were not responsible for this call at all. They warned her not to answer her phone again, or to go to the window, as it was likely whoever had called her was outside the building, possibly targeting her or just calling random numbers to see if he could find a woman alone in her house. The details get hazy from here. I believe someone was sent over to check the building, but they never found whoever it was that had been making the call.
Hey guys, it's the Grim Reader here. I hope you enjoyed listening through that. If you did, please slap a like, and if you haven't already, why not subscribe to be notified of future uploads? If you have a story you want me to narrate, please send it to my email in the description box. Once again, thanks a lot for listening.